Ugh, another pointless video call where nothing gets done. I think you're on mute, David.
Sorry. What did I miss?
IT just approved Miro for the whole company.
Miro. That's the...
Online whiteboard for team collaboration. We can make these long video meetings so much shorter with Miro boards. We can share ideas, feedback, and updates on them whenever. Actually see what we're talking about.
It's all online.
Miro will make our flexible work setup so much easier. With one virtual space for our brainstorms, projects, presentations.
Oh, that sounds kind of amazing. So I don't need to wake up for 6 a.m. calls with the London office anymore.
Now you're getting it.
Don't let time zones get in the way of your team working well together. See why 99% of the Fortune 100 trust Miro to get good work done from anywhere. Get your first 3 boards free at Miro.com. That's Miro.com.
This is Dream Power Radio, the place where your dreams turn into reality. Here is your host, Debbie Spector-Weissman.
Hello, 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 and welcome to Dream Power Radio. This is the place where we talk about dreams, both daytime and nighttime dreams, and how you can use them to make the internal shift to a life you love and rediscover the truth of who you really are. My guest on today's episode, David Edwards, worked for years in the healthcare industry, but this is not going to be a show about health, at least not physical health. It was in working with his patients and other professionals in his field that he had what he called an epiphany. What David saw was that people were lacking core skills that could make their lives better. And he ended up writing a book about it called Knew You, Who Knew, in which he details a program on how people can get more done and empower themselves to be successful. And that's what we're going to talk about. So welcome to Dream Power Radio, David.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here.
Oh, it is my pleasure. Well, David, tell me all about this epiphany. What made the light go on for you?
Well, as you noted, I was working in healthcare, and I'd only been working there in healthcare for about 35 years. And so maybe I'm a little bit of a slow learner, but I was the CEO of a community health center. And we had developed a model of care that put you, Debbie, at the center of the care team. And so instead of coming in and the doctor seeing you and patting you on the head and say, take these pills and do these things and you'll be a good patient, we said, hi, Debbie, how can we help you? And then we had people in different roles that would help you depending on what your needs are. But we really relied on you being the captain of that care team. And we were building a new health center because we'd done well. And we had this chance to build something from scratch, purposefully designed around this model of care where you're at the center. You're the captain of the team. And I realized if the patient is the captain of the team and we don't help the patient to do a better job of that, then we're going to limit how effective this new building is going to be and how effective we will be in helping folks that come to us. And so I started asking some of the therapists and psychologists and health workers and health coaches and doctors and nurses and dentists and hygienists and all these people that we had in this care team. And I said, well, what does it even mean? What is the role? How do we understand this and how do we help people? So we started asking these questions. And it really starts with, questions. I think almost any epiphanies that we have, they started at some point with asking questions. And we started realizing that this was all about change, right? Because anything we want to do in our lives is going to involve some kind of change. And it can be external change, right? So stuff goes on around us. I mean, years ago, we would get on the telephone and now we talk on Zoom and we can, see each other and hear each other and see what our backgrounds are and all these cool stuff. So these things change around us. We got to keep up with that. So that's good. That's important. But even more important is this idea of self-directed change, right? So this is the change in who I'm becoming, not just what I'm doing, but who I'm becoming. And as I studied that, we were looking at various models of change. And you might think, what do you mean change? There's just like one thing. We do this, this, and this, and we change, right? But no, nothing about human beings is that simple. And so I think I had 6 models of change up on a spreadsheet that I'd built, and the trans-theoretical model of change, and the influencer model, and the et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And what I realized, so this was like a second epiphany, was that at the core of all of these models of change, to the very beginning or the early stages, is this idea of personal motivation. The do I want to, what do I want to do? And I thought, well, that's, it's pervasive across any of these theories. So we need to understand that better. And if we're going to help our patients to be the captain, right, then we better understand these theories of change and this idea of personal or intrinsic motivation.
I just want to ask you this. How difficult was it for you to get the patients to see this? Because most people are conditioned, I have something wrong with me, I'm going to go see a doctor, and the doctor's going to take care of me. And you're basically standing it on its head and saying, no, you come here, you tell us what you need, and you know about it. So how difficult was it for them?
It was sometimes very difficult, right? Because we're used to a certain way of operating. But what we found was that by putting our patient in this role, they felt empowered. So they learned after a while, and it just made sense. If you think about it, right? I am in the clinic, even if I have some serious health challenges, I don't normally go to the clinic, even though I might have a therapist I see and a physician that I see and a dentist that I see or a hygienist, right? But I'm still not there maybe once a month or every couple of weeks, right? If I'm in a therapeutic relationship. We did help people with addictions as well. That would be more often, sometimes a couple times a week, especially early on. But still, even then, you are not in the clinic the vast majority of the time. And so it really resonates with people when we remind them that we can't be with you 24/7. In fact, you are outside of the walls of the health center and outside of our support and influence most of your life. And so we really rely on you, and you frankly rely on yourself to be in charge of what's going on here. Because when you leave, we don't want you to think, this is what they told me to do. We want you to be thinking, this is what I need to do for myself. This is what I need to do for my family. This is what I need to do for my children. This is what I need to do to be the person and to become what I want to be, which may be healthy. Another thing I think it's very powerful is for people on video, we often think, I've got my hand up on the left if you're on audio, and the sun's coming on, so it's really bright. Look at that. Anyways, we think that this on the left is sick. And then I take my hand and I put it on the right, and we think on the right, that's healthy. And we think the continuum is between sick and healthy. But that's really a false idea. But what we want to do is I've got my hand on the left and the other hand on the right. And right in the middle, we want to say, I don't have any disease, right? So on the left is I'm sick, and there's a continuum of illness, if you will, until in the middle, I am no longer sick, right? I am technically without disease. So I'm not depressed anymore. My heart disease is under control, or my cancer is gone, or my carbuncle's been removed, or whatever it is, right? But from the middle to the right, that is my opportunity for wellness and for health. So wellness and health is actually a continuum. And in the physical world, that's the case. So for example, if I lack disease, but I want to be stronger, right? So maybe I can do 10 sit-ups, right? So there's a little bit of progress and being more healthy, more well. And then maybe tomorrow I can do 11, right? And maybe a couple of days later I could do 12. So it's a continuum and I can evolve along that, but it's not a single point in time or a single place. And the same with mental, right? So with the spiritual or mental or things that aren't just physical, right? And so it's a continuum, especially in the mental and in the spiritual. And so that is a continuum that, frankly, is a journey that we can be on for the rest of our lives. And so it's not got a specific endpoint. It's just this journey that we're on, and we're continually progressing. And so if we think about life that way, it really changes up kind of our mental model, our perspective.
Yeah, I like to say that we are on a journey, and I totally agree with you about that. But in order for that to be successful, we have to really understand that we are in control of our behavior, our situation, what we can do. And that involves some self-awareness. And I like to also say most people sleepwalk through life. They don't really take the time to really pay attention to where they are and who they are, where they are, and what they really want. How does one develop that self-awareness?
I think that's a beautiful question. And in fact, if in my book, I have 10 principles, 10 core principles that are the principles of our personal motivation. The second principle is, as if you had, is in fact self-awareness. Awareness, I should say, has two elements, as a lot of things, I guess. So first, in awareness, we can be aware of what's going on around us. And if some of the listeners or watchers maybe fall, and you guys have to think about this, right? So the first step is to spend a little tiny bit of time every day thinking, right? We have to think. We can't, as you said, just sleepwalk through life. And so, and I'll kind of combine some of the principles here. The fourth principle is my intent or intentionality. Right? And so something I recommend, which is a very simple thing that anybody can do, any of us can do, is thinking about our intent is to be intentional in the morning. So when I get up, whenever that is, if you work swing shift, that might be 5 o'clock at night. But for most of us, it's sometime in the morning, right? Whatever it is for you, we wake up in the morning and we think about, what is my intent today? You might have some goals you're working on. There could be some outcome type goals, right? Which is, I want to get this done, or I want to do this or accomplish this. They might be a process type goal, which is something that I enjoy doing and or something or someone I am trying to become. So there's a really key distinction. There's things we want to do, and there are things we want to become. So as we're intentional about those things in the morning, we're mindful. And then we go through our day. And at the end of the day, and this isn't like a lot of time, we can spend 5 minutes on this in the morning and frankly, 5 minutes in the evening. But in the evening, we are then accountable for what we did. And so again, this is this process of thinking and not sleepwalking through the day, because we have some goals that we've set that we're intentional about. And at the end of the day, we're going, how did I do, right? If I'm trying to be more kind to myself, for example, or if I'm trying to, whatever it is, I ask myself at the end of the day, how did I do? I'm accountable to it. And in this process of being accountable, and again, this isn't ruminating and spending a lot of time on it, but simply a few minutes to say, how did I do? And then we sleep on it, right? And overnight, in our dreams, in our brain, it processes, it categorizes, it places things in order. And in the morning, and I start that day off then based upon what I've learned through my accountability. And I go, okay, so yesterday I struggled with something. Today, my intent is to do a little bit better. And this is how I'm going to do it. And I actually recommend there's like a 5-step process to help you do a little bit better. And then you go through your day and you're accountable again. It becomes a daily process. But in doing this, we are not sleepwalking, right? We are being intentional. and we are trying to do and trying to become the things that we intend to do, not frankly what your spouse wants you to do or your friends want you to do or your boss wants you to do, because everybody wants us to do or be something, which is okay, because that's a part of being connected to others. But when it comes right down to it, we want, as we talked about, not just to be the captain of our care team, but to be the captain of our life, to be intentional about our life and accountable about our life. And these 10 principles, 2 of which we just talked about, help us to do that.
Oh, that is such wonderful advice. And on that note, we have to take a short break. We are speaking with David Edwards about motivation and how to be our best self. And we'll be right back. If you're not pleased with the trajectory of your life, the time to begin your own personal transformation is now. And your dreams can help pave the way. How? By tapping into your unvoiced confidence. What is unvoiced confidence, you say? It's the acceptance of your abilities and qualities. It's a state of mind coming from liking and even loving yourself, and feeling free to say or do anything you want without concern for the judgment of others. You were born confident, but may have had it chipped away little by the negative self-beliefs you've picked up over the years. If you're looking for the heightened energy, clarity of thought, and the feeling of being more alive that comes from self-confidence, you can rediscover it by paying attention to your dreams. Need some help doing this? Go to my website, thedreamcoach.net, and sign up for my complimentary dream discovery session. I can help show you how your dreams can help you return to the confident person you were always meant to be. Again, go to thedreamcoach.net. thedreamcoach.net.
Welcome back to Dream Power Radio with your host, Debbie Spector-Weissman.
Yes, welcome back to Dream Power Radio. I'm your host, Debbie Spector-Weissman, and we're talking with David Edwards about his book, Knew You, Who Knew? Well, David, the main focus of your book is all about how we can develop the motivation to be our best selves. So can you give me another idea of what we can do to build that motivation muscle in ourselves?
A lot of people ask, where do I start? I mean, what's the first thing, or if there is any sequence to anything? And I joyfully respond, yes, there is a great place to start. And any of us, this is a great place to start. And as we think about not us as a machine, but us as a part of nature, right? So more like a cherry tree than a machine. Cherry tree has to start with developing the roots, right? That's the first thing that happens when the seed germinates. And those roots start to grow out. And as the trunk goes up, the roots get bigger and deeper and more effective. And the trunk gets bigger and stronger and more flexible, right? And then the roots get bigger and wider. And that's this kind of progress. And eventually the tree grows up and it bears fruit. So much of what we see today is about bearing fruit, right? It's the getting things done stuff, which is good. It's important. But by itself, it leaves us imbalanced. And so what we want to do is do some things like we talked about a few minutes ago, like being intentional, like being mindful, like being grounded. These things help us to stay strong and bear the weight of great accomplishment. And so the very first thing, as we think about those roots, is to make our own core values explicit. Now, this isn't 47 values. We may have 47 things that are important to us, but I don't know about you, I can't remember 47 things. So what we want to do is go through a process, which is the first chapter of the book, because it really is this foundational. It's building our root ball and making it vibrant and strong and healthy and deep and wide. And so we want to understand at least our top 5 core values. And again, I walk you through a process of taking the 47 or whatever the number is and kind of boiling it down to these are what I prioritize. And we think about this, most of these I hope are actual values. And there's no right or wrong. So you think, oh gosh, I got to get the right values. Well, there's no right or wrong values. There's only what your values are, right? This is very personal. As we talked about earlier, it's not your parents, your friends, your neighbors. your boss, your whoever else. These are your values. And so you go this process and you boil it down to your top 5. What you say is, under any circumstance that I'm in, these 5 values will basically guide my life. And with those 5 values, then you want to make them explicit, because a vague value is only vaguely useful. If I'm hungry and I go, I'm hungry, that's kind of vague. I don't know what to do with that. But if I say I'm hungry and Mexican food sounds good, and I know there's a Mexican restaurant about 10 minutes away, and I just checked the internet, I know that they're open, and a burrito sounds good with beans and rice and some chicken, all of a sudden, that becomes actionable. That's specific enough. I understand what it is. I understand how to get there. I understand what I'm going to do, right, to follow that. And so we make it explicit. It makes it actionable. It makes it powerful in our life. And so I recommend a 3-step process. So the first step is, once you've got the 5, is each one you define it. What does this mean? Because what to your neighbor or your spouse or your kids or whoever, right, it might mean something a little different. But that's not what we're concerned about. We're concerned about you and what you think it means. So you write it out. The second thing we do, or that you do, is that you say, what does it look like when I'm living this value? What does that look like day to day? And the last thing you do is you write out, why am I better off for living this value, right? Why is this make my life better? So you've got these 3 things you've done for each of those top 5 values. And I felt like values were important through most of my life. I had honestly no idea that the research behind these is so powerful. If we do this process and we make these values our own personal top 5 values explicit, it helps us have more meaning in our life. So the things we do every day, as we're setting and being intentional, and we're setting goals, and we're learning from things we succeed on and mistakes we make, right? We do all these other things. When we've aligned these things with our values, we have greater meaning in our life. And meaning is the core source of motivation for things that are important to us. It helps us to be more focused. So as we go through the day, we've got these values which are explicit and they are present in our mind because of the process that we've gone through. It's not over here someplace, right? Because when our values are over there someplace, we forget about them. And then we go through our day, and as we're hopefully being accountable now in the evening, we have regrets because we're not living our values the way that we would like to, because we've put them over there. So when we make them explicit, they're kind of in front of us, and the chances that we're going to ignore them are much less. So we have less regret in our life. So regret is like getting a rock and throw it in the backpack instead of getting a rock and throwing it off to the side. And if we have a lot of regrets and we filled that backpack, we've got this heavy weight and everything we do is harder. Everything takes longer. Everything just feels like so much work. But when the backpack is light, right, everything's easier. So we have all these scientifically proven benefits of doing something that probably for most of us takes a couple of hours of our time and our entire life. And it has all these amazing benefits. And again, it's the roots, it's that foundation that facilitates and creates a situation where we normally and naturally have more fruit. We have more outcomes, if you will. But it's not that we're forced it, or it's a tip or a trick or a technique, and there's nothing wrong with those, the 3 T's I call them. There's nothing wrong with those. But the 3 T's without these roots and these foundations become hollow, and they lack power. They lack motivation, right? And so it's this beautiful process of our life of creating this balance. I can get more done, but I'm becoming more, right? By making my values explicit, by being intentional, by improving my awareness. And there's lots of other things we can do, obviously, in all of these. But my book, I try to tell people, is not the master course in any one of these. It's an introduction to each of these 10 principles that gets you started with one or two things that starts to build these foundations. And from there, you've got the rest of your life. It's basically limitless what you can do with it. But this is building the foundations, because you don't want to build all this stuff up here without foundations.
Right. And you have to start someplace. And it is having the foundation. You can build from the foundation. And once you have that, you can grow from there. One of the other attributes that you talk about in your book is the idea of self-compassion. We talk a lot about compassion. We should be compassionate to other people and in our society and the world and everything. But we never really think of being compassionate to ourselves. So how do we believe that we're worthy of self-compassion?
It's an interesting thing. And it's so unfortunate that people that loved us growing up, or that were supposed to love us in some situations, right, so often taught us that when we make a mistake, we should beat up on ourselves. But again, the science, the research has proven that when we beat up on ourselves for making a mistake, we diminish our capacity to actually do better and not repeat that mistake. So can you imagine that? We not only have this burden, if you will, of this mistake, but then we make our capacity to overcome the burden lower. And it's really tragic. But what happens, according to the research, is that when we treat ourselves with kindness, like would a close friend or a loving family member, we use that kind of language, then our capacity to overcome this mistake we've made, increases. So it's kind of like giving ourselves a break, but the research is there. And so again, not the master course, why are we worthy? That's a really good question. I will suggest to you that as a human being, we have natively, naturally, without any effort on our own, value. As a human being, we have value and we have capacity that is literally limitless. And because our potential is so incredible, whatever's happened in our past or not happened in our past, right? Whatever our education level is, whatever our family name is, whether we have money or not, whatever these kind of external things that we use to judge ourselves, to put ourselves into pockets and buckets and holes and whatever, we have all these monikers and labels we put on ourselves. If we step aside from all of those labels and simply look at what is a human being's capacity, which is limitless, then we have value, we have worth, and we're worth aligning ourselves with correct, enduring principles.
That is a wonderful way to end this. I would love to go through all the other principles, but we're just about out of time. So, David, how can people find out more about you and your book?
So I have a website. It's simply my name. Go www.davidredwards.com. That's a simple way, and you can see more about my book, and I have my blog, and I try to write things. So like if you're struggling with coming up with your values, I offer a bunch of exercises, fun things like taking pictures of stuff and thinking about people you admire, and just very simple ways to start to put the principles into action. And so that's a great place to go. I'm on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn as well. And that's probably that's the best way to start.
Wonderful. Well, David, thank you so much for being on Dream Power Radio today.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you, Debbie.
Hey, we've been speaking about motivation and personal success with David R. Edwards. I hope you've enjoyed today's program. If so, please hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Until next time, this is Debbie Spector-Weissman saying, sweet dreams, everybody.
You've been listening to Dream Power Radio with your host, Debbie Spector-Weissman. For more information on Debbie or to sign up for her newsletter, go to dreampowerradio.com. This has been Dream Power Radio on the amazing Women and Men of Power Network. the world's leading positive programming network, powered by Raven International.